I am thrilled to be joined here by Kate Ballard, and she is a master saddler, which in her bio is honestly out of this world. I was just saying if we're going to talk to anybody on the topic of saddle fitting and finding the right saddle, Kate is, I mean, she couldn't be a better expert for this topic. So, Kate, on that note, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Good morning.
Yeah, good afternoon. Where are you located? Where are you based?
I'm in Wellington, Florida.
Oh, okay. Well, good morning to you too. I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
assuming you might be in London, but it makes sense
No,
that you
no,
are
no.
in Florida.
I live in Florida. I've got palm trees in my back garden, which is lovely.
That is lovely. Well, we're really appreciative of you taking your Monday morning to share about your expertise with us. Kind of as a way of kicking this off, do you mind just sharing a bit about your background and what drew you to saddle making at such a young age, and what has kept you inspired throughout the such an extensive training process?
Um, so yeah, I left school at 15, and went straight into the saddlery trade. I've wanted to make saddles since I was 11 years old. Um, I know I was a mad horsey girl. That was it, obsessed with horses. And I went to a museum which had huge halls of horses displaying the history of horses through time. And so they had Roman carriages set, the horses that would pull milk crates and ambulances and the fire trucks, everything. So it was a whole history of the horse through time. And in between the halls, they'd set up a saddler's workshop, and they had two models of men working, one at the bench and one as a harness maker, making a collar. And I fell in love with the trade right there and then. That was it. I was instantly hooked. And I remember all my school essays were writing about how I wanted to be a saddler. That's all I wanted to do. And my mum and dad thought I was probably slightly mad. But so I left school at 16. I begged my dad to take me to a master saddler close to home. Which he finally caved and took me to see him, and he encouraged me to apply to Cordwainers College in London, which actually doesn't exist anymore. It's Cordwainer comes from the word cordovan, which is goat skin, which is from shoemaking. They used to make shoes out of goat skin, so that's where that comes from. So I went to Cordwainers Technical College, where they did saddle making and shoemaking. In the East End of London, of all places. And I spent 3 years there making bridles, learning how to make saddles, harness, all the written and practical work. And then from there, I was offered a 4-year formal apprentice with a master saddler down on the south coast of England in West Sussex. And I spent 4 years in the industry learning how to repair everything I'd learned to make in college, and learning the quicker ways to do it, and experience and saddle fitting as well, extensive. So in England, you have to do a minimum of 7 years to become a master saddler, and you're continually assessed through bridle making, saddle making, and harness making. And I'm still assessed. I still have to do educational series. So I'm licensed and registered. And it's an addiction. It's an addiction.
That is, your story is incredible. You are the one in a billion who gets obsessed with something at 11 years old and then actually pursues it. And
Very lucky.
it is really cool to have found your passion so early and pursue it,
Yeah.
and be such a expert in that field.
Well, it's
And
taken a long time,
yeah,
it's taken, yeah, and I still don't know everything. We never do we? We're always continually learning. But, I after my 7 years, I did 2 years as we call it a journeyman. I think in America, you'd probably call it an intern. So you're qualified, you're released into the industry, you're not overseen by a master saddler, but the powers that be still are watching you, because I'm still watched. My governing body is the Society of Master Saddlers. So they are there to uphold the standard of our industry, which is so important.
Wow. So awesome. So,
Yeah.
Kate, what kind of describe what the day-to-day is for a master saddler?
Oh gosh, it's changing. It's changed over the years. Most of my business now is saddle fitting. I don't do so much bench work anymore. Typically, I would divide my days, for example, 3 days on the road saddle fitting and 2 days at the bench. And that varies in season. Down here in Florida, when you've got all the snowbirds that come in. So from October, November, all the way through to April, May, all I do is saddle fitting and flocking. Now I get to do some more of the bench work, where I'm doing new trees, new seats, new billets, new knee pads, repairing bridles, just, because it calms down a bit. And then I'll travel. End of June, I travel, because I follow everybody that's come down for season, and then I follow them north. Mostly all saddle checks, and flocking and things like that, and then I come back down.
Got it. And what would you say is something most people don't realize about the craft of saddle making or fitting?
But it takes years. It's not a week. You can't learn this in a week. You cannot learn in this trade or industry in a week. It takes years, years and years and years to accumulate the knowledge and the skill. You have to have skill to know what you're doing when you're working the wool in the panel of saddles. Because if you don't, you could create more issues if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And when you are hired for saddle fitting consultations, is that related to a specific brand, or are you brand agnostic and you're hired by the rider to go and kind of review their equipment setup?
Typically, yes. So I'm independent. I carry brands. I do carry brands of saddles, because you sell what you like, So I do have a few brands of saddles that I work with, but I'm very, very, very picky. And so yes, I can work on all saddles. And I do work on all saddles. Believe me, I've taken thousands and thousands and thousands of saddles apart over the years. I know exactly what's in them and who's made them. As a saddler and a saddle maker, we all have telltale signs of the way we stitch and the way we put things together. You get to know over the years who's done what. So having said that, as a member of the Society of Master Saddlers, we do have a code of conduct. If another SMS, Society of Master Saddlers, we shorten it to SMS. If it's another SMS fitter that has fitted a saddle and the client is having an issue, there is a code of conduct, which is a code of ethics, really, and professionalism that we uphold as members, so no one's caught in any crossfires.
Got it.
So that basically boils down to, if there's another SMS member that's fitted a saddle and there's a problem, and I get called, I can't just come in and poo-poo everything. There is, which is, I would never do. You don't want to do that. You refer the client back to the original fitter, and then maybe I would make a phone call to that fitter and have a discussion, etc., just to resolve the issue as best and quickly as we can for the horse and the rider.
Yeah. How as a consumer, how would I know if the person coming to fit my saddle is an SMS member?
You can go to the website. If you go to the SMS website, I think it's societyofmastersaddlers.co.uk. There's a list of everybody that's registered, and it will tell you whether they're a trainee, a master saddler, or a saddle fitter, a qualified saddle fitter. So it depends what you're looking for. and they will be registered, and it will tell you what area they're in, so you can look up and see if there's someone local.
Got it. Is there an equivalent program in the US, or is the UK
No,
really kind of the leader? Wow, that is wild.
because it's brand specific. What they do here, a lot of the courses would be brand specific.
Man. Okay, super interesting.
Yeah.
Um, so if we jump into some saddle fit basics, what
Yes.
are some of the most common signs that a saddle may not fit properly for either the horse or the rider?
Um, for the horses, usually they stop going forward. It's usually a discomfort, and they'll stop going forward, especially if they're jumping. They start stopping, or when they land, they're throwing their head up. Um, and in dressage, it's usually the downward transitions that tell you, because they start throwing their head up, and what they're essentially doing is, by throwing their head up, they're dropping their withers at the base there to get away from whatever is uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. And for the are there what are you looking out for the rider to say that the saddle does not fit for the rider?
So the rider is usually out of balance. Either the seat's too long, too short, or the block. A lot of riders like the exterior block. It's in the wrong place. So if the block, there's nothing worse than a badly placed exterior block for the rider, because that plays havoc with your body. It can push your bottom to the back of the saddle, and that means you're tipping forward. Or if it's the seat and the block will draw you into where it wants you to be. So if that isn't in a good placement for the rider, it does play havoc. Your lower leg goes forward, or your lower leg goes back. You're leaning back, you're tipping forward. There's all sorts of things. The rider wants to be shoulder, hip, heel over the natural centre of gravity of the horse.
Yeah.
And that you should be able just to, a lot of riders get left behind the movement, or they're in front of the movement. That can actually just be that the saddle isn't right for that rider.
Yeah. Okay, that makes perfect sense. And as far as so you mentioned like head throwing in either flat work or jumping for the horse. Are there any other physical issues to look out for that can result from poor saddle fit?
Lameness. Sometimes it's so bad the horse does go bridle lame. Um, you know, back soreness. Back soreness is a subject to opinion, because anybody can make a horse's back look sore.
Yeah.
So I think it depends on who's telling you the back is sore, because sometimes, more often than not, it's not actually coming from the saddle. It's
Yeah.
usually neck or hind end. But yes, the muscles underneath sometimes can be very rigid, and that can be a sign of poor saddle fit, where the muscles feel like a steel plate. It's not. It doesn't tend to be like a soreness, because I don't think soreness is a bad thing sometimes, because you have to tear and repair to build muscle. It's like if we go to the gym and work out, we have sore muscles. My legs are always sore because I've been doing leg presses. I mean, I can still get up and go to work. It's just a soreness. I think, oh yeah, I've worked those muscles. That's a good thing. So I think if we're asking these horses to do higher fences or tighter turns or whatever we're doing to gymnasticize them, expect a little bit of soreness. That's not bad. It doesn't mean it's a bad thing.
I think about that all the time because I can't even tell you how often I like cannot walk because
Right.
of like the prior day at the gym. And I'm
For
like, wow, these
sure.
horses are really, they don't really
For sure.
show
For
that.
sure.
But
I mean, these
yeah,
horses, first of all, they're 1,500 pounds. I mean, come on. They're big, 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 big muscles too. So, we're asking them to do 8-meter circles,
yeah,
and cross their legs and everything. So I think expect soreness. It's not necessarily bad. These horses have pulled heavy machinery over fields and war and no one stopped a war or ploughing their fields because their horse's back sore. Sorry, but we get sore muscles.
Yeah.
If it's extensive soreness and there's a lameness issue, then okay, we've got to think about it. But the occasional soreness isn't bad. It really does mean you're tearing and repairing.
That really does make a lot of sense. Okay, as we talk about saddle shopping, when someone is shopping for a saddle, what are the most important factors to consider?
Quality. Where's the saddle made? Quality for money. Yep, absolutely. Where is it made? Find out where it's made. Advocate for your horse.
What are the things to like? What are good answers to that question? Like, where do you want to have it made?
So many saddles today are not made where the people say they're made. That's a whole other subject. I'm going to say England, because our saddle making dates back to the 1100s. Actually, written saddle making, documented written saddle making dates back to 1100s. So our industry, and I know I'm biased, but our industry is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old. And it was the centre of the saddlery industry was in London, and then the invention of the motor car came along, and the saddlers went north, which is why they're in Walsall now in England. But that industry has been handed down for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So we're fairly proficient at it. And we do have, English leather is one of the best leathers that you can get. But it's the skill of the craftsmanship that's been handed down from generation to generation to generation.
And are there places that a saddle could be made that you would be like, that's a red flag?
Yeah, for sure.
Do you are you willing to share what those places are, or you don't want to?
I don't want people coming for me.
Okay. Okay. Well, reach out to Kate separately.
Yes,
to
reach
get
out
an
to me.
answer to that question.
Yeah, I mean, I can be fairly vocal, but there are countries where it's getting better, but it's not. There's still what we would we would use the word dodgy. I don't know if you have an American word for dodgy. They're subpar. Let's say that they're not. Yeah, and I know saddles are expensive. Believe me, that's why I don't have horses, because horses are expensive, and cheap in the long run is expensive, unfortunately, and that's quite harsh, but
Yeah.
it's the truth.
I find that's true of pretty much everything. Like
For sure.
everything, like clothing you buy,
For
food you
sure.
buy, yeah.
It's a luxury. Having a horse is a luxury. It's a luxury item, and so therefore you do have luxury prices with many things. And the saddlery industry, unfortunately, is in a mess because it's a dying industry. No one's coming into it. Nobody wants to learn how to make saddles. Nobody wants to put years and years and years and years into it. They want to do a week and off they go. It's not what it was.
Yeah. How should someone decide between buying a new saddle versus finding a high quality used one?
Budget,
Yeah.
I suppose. There's nothing wrong with a high quality used one at all. If it fits the horse and it fits you as a rider, do that. For sure.
When talking about used saddles, what kind of damage or wear should raise red flags?
Broken tree.
And what are you looking out for to determine if that's the case?
So you want to, that a lot of people buy saddles off the internet, but the internet is also a dumping ground for that particular issue. The tree needs to be solid on the inside. You can't see the saddle tree in the saddle unless you have x-ray eye vision, which even I don't have. So the best way of checking the tree is to put the cantle against your ribs and pull the saddle towards you. and then flex the points to see if there's movement. What you want to be listening to is any clicking or squeaking.
Got it.
And then that would indicate that there could be an issue. Sometimes it's just the rivets need some WD-40 or something like that. But I would take it to somebody who can take the saddle apart and have a look. That would be the solution, really, to see exactly what's going on in the inside. It just a peace of mind.
Yeah. Is there anything besides broken tree that you look out for on a used saddle?
You want it to be. You don't want the wool to be lumpy like a cobbled street. It's if you're spending money on a used saddle, you don't want a rip in the seat or in the knee pads or anything like that. Unless it's $50 and you're going to put it on a horse you're backing. If you're spending thousands, then it should be in good nick. No cracks and hard leather. It should be decent.
Yeah. And when somebody is going to start the process of buying a new saddle, kind of where do you recommend they start? Like, is a tack store the right place to go? Is reaching out to the various brands the right place to go? Like, kind of what's that process in recommendation
It's a
for you?
whole minefield, absolute minefield. I mean, the reps, they're brand specific, and if you like a brand, then the rep, one would hope that they're knowledgeable enough about the product that they can explain to you each of the different models. It depends what you're looking for. Again, a lot of I don't visit a lot of tack shops, so I don't really know what they're selling. I assume they've got the Wintec brands type of thing that are easily adjustable for people who don't have the ability for or the availability for saddlers close to them. That they're quite a good idea, actually. It's hard when there's so few of us in this country. It's really difficult. It's really, really difficult. I think you've got to find somebody that you trust. Saddle fitting is very relational. You have to find someone that you trust to help find you the right saddle, and that's difficult. That's easy for me to say that, but that's very difficult.
Yeah. And do you do you do any remote work or you have to be in person?
I have done virtual. It's hard. It's very hard to do virtual. I get a better idea virtual. It's better to do it hands-on, where I can put my hands on the saddle and the horse. But I have done virtual, especially through COVID. I did a lot of virtual, but they were mostly clients that I'd already seen and I knew the horse and the saddle. But yes, I can do it.
Yeah. Okay. Can you explain the difference between wool and foam flocking and the pros and cons of each?
Foam is a pre-shaped, pre-formed panel. It's usually felt with foam wrapped around it, and then the leather is stitched onto the panel, onto that piece. So it is not adjustable. It's pre-formed, pre-shaped, leather's wrapped onto it, and then it's put in the saddle. Foam was invented for the American market, where the English saddlers, because they made foam panels because there wasn't any skill here in the United States. When English saddles first started to come out to the United States, they had to do something because there was no skill here to work the wool or flock the wool. So they came up with the foam panels that are the similar shape of a wool flocked panel, but wouldn't need any rebalancing to the horse.
Okay.
So that's why they were invented. Wool has been used for centuries. Wool it's a natural fibre. It's like a cushion, so it will go down when you sit and then it goes back up when you rise. So it shock absorbs the rider away from the horse's back. Wool needs maintenance. It's a higher maintenance, so you need someone to come and check the wool and make sure the saddle is balanced for the rider, which you don't and can't with foam. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I lost the sound.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yes.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
How often should you be checking that with wool?
The wool, so if you have a new saddle or a saddle that has been completely reflocked, where the wool has been taken out and you're starting over with fresh, which would be in a new saddle as well, initially the saddle probably should be looked at anywhere between 6 to 8 weeks after that initial purchase or reflock, because the rider's weight will condense the wool. We can't put the wool in like the rider's weight can, because the movement of the horse and the rider will allow the wool to bed down to conform to the shape of the horse. So we have to allow that period of time for the wool to settle, and then we rebalance it. And then from there on, you probably should get your saddle looked at a minimum of twice a year.
Wow, that is a lot. Oh my gosh. Okay. And then
Yeah.
so the pro of foam is just that it's kind of like plug and play, but you're not going to get the shock absorption or like the customization that you would get with wool. Is that fair to say?
I don't know about the shock. I mean, I've pressure map tested a lot of foam saddles, but some are better than others. The foam is just not technical enough to give you the ability, if you need to balance the saddle and bring the back up, there's no way of doing it. Or if you need to lift the front, you can't do it. The foam panels have to be an absolute perfect fit for that horse.
Got it.
Otherwise it doesn't work. And I know people shove loads of pads under it. I mean, which is like, why are you buying a close contact saddle? If you're buying a close contact saddle and then put 3 pads under it, it defeats the purpose. But foam is just, for me as a saddle fitter, foam is not technical enough to get that saddle balanced.
Got it. Okay, so that makes perfect sense. Okay, I just asked that. Never mind. Dot to dot measurement is something we see in a lot of saddle ads. What does that actually mean, and how helpful is it?
Dot to dot. I don't.
Yeah, that was just a question we got. Is that not no, okay? Maybe I guess what measurement should somebody be looking for, or as like their key factors when they're looking to fit their saddle?
Oh gosh, that's a whole minefield again. So saddles, every saddle and every model within a brand usually will be on a different tree. So those tree widths are different model to model, company to company, because it depends where the trees come from, and it depends how long the points are. In the industry, when we measure the width of a saddle, it's measured from the bottom of the point directly across to the other point. So for example, 11 inches would be maybe a medium wide. Okay. If the points are shorter, that measurement from point to point will be completely different. If the points are longer, again, that measurement will be completely different. So it depends how long the points are as to what you're measuring. There's no standard. There's no standard in the industry at all. 11 inches doesn't mean a medium wide in brand A is going to be the same in brand B, or model A and model B. There is no standard. Don't even go down that road. Yeah. Typically, you want to measure, if you're trying to measure the width of your horse, you want to take across the withers 2 fingers behind the back of the scapula. Have the horse standing still, square, and on as level surface as you can. At least try and get the front feet standing square, and then go across the wither, 2 fingers behind the back of the scapula. That will help you determine the tree width. but it will depend on how long the points are as to where you take the cross measurement.
Wow. They really don't make this easy.
They do not make it easy because there's no standard.
That just doesn't make any sense, but
I know, but because there are thousands of models of trees our industry is that 1,000 years old. There's millions of trees out there that different companies use. So that's difficult. And then of course when the saddle is made up, the panels where the cut of the panel where the panel starts where the wool or the foam is, if it's low, that saddle will be wider, whereas if they're cut higher, it will be narrower. So there's no standard.
okay.
Get a professional.
Yeah, basically hire Kate or bust. If we go into the world of custom saddles and fitting, if someone is ordering a custom saddle, what steps should they take to ensure it actually fits their horse when it arrives?
You should be using somebody who has qualifications and an education and know what they're doing.
Okay, so there's no testing you really recommend for a rider to do on their own.
No.
Okay.
I would, if you're investing thousands of dollars in a made to measure saddle, do not do it on your own. I know it's a waste of money. You're wasting money.
No, that makes sense.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
If you do invest in a custom saddle and you've used a professional and it doesn't fit, what recourse does a rider have, or what signs should they look for in a saddle maker to avoid this situation?
Depends what the sales agreement is. And state to state varies. In the state of Florida, when you order a made to measure saddle, it is yours. Anything, if you order a made to measure car, made to measure suit, pair of shoes, anything, it is yours. That's the state. So it will vary state to state. Most people, would get 30 days too. If you order a saddle, and after 30 days, you're like, yeah, no, it's not for me. It doesn't work. You can get recourse on that. It depends on what the sales agreement is, and who's saying it doesn't fit.
Yeah, fair.
Is it another master saddler or another same person with the same qualifications as the person that's fitted it? It's a whole rabbit hole, and that's a very hard question to answer because there's always two sides of the story. So one would hope that you've done your research and that you've got somebody reputable to help you find that right saddle. And then that goes back to the relationship that you have with that person. Can that saddle be taken back and you find something else? Is that person willing to say, okay, let's try something else, and just not take the money and run?
Yeah. So there's so many, as you mentioned, there's so many different saddle brands out there, and they're all kind of pitching something different.
So shoulder free is the biggest thing. Yeah.
What are your kind of recommendations of what to prioritize of the things that you're looking that you're just getting through all the marketing and salesy speech
you've got to wheedle your way through all the magical promises that they're going to promise you. It's relational. Do you trust that person that you're buying the saddle from? How long have they been doing it? Have they got qualifications, or are they just selling a product to take the money? I know that's harsh, but that's reality. A lot of people see, especially in the jumper world, they see money and they're like, oh yeah, it's great, and never hear from them ever again. It's tough. It's really, 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 really hard. But all I can promote is get somebody who knows what they're doing and that has qualifications. Like you wouldn't go to a doctor without having a doctor without any qualifications. I mean, that it's a serious business. If you're investing that much money, get somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're so expensive.
They're
Um,
terribly expensive. It is, and I know they're very, very, very expensive. But I don't set the prices, It's because I want quality, value for money and quality products, and that's you've got to do some digging to find out where they're made.
yeah. How often are you working with clients that think that they are like hardcore loyal to a certain brand and you get out there and you're like, this is not right for you? Or is it mostly like we just need to make small adjustments? Is it like a full brand switch that you're doing often or yeah, or small adjustments?
Both. And I don't push my brand. I don't. If you say that is, again, with the foam saddles, I cannot do anything with that
Mhm.
unless they want to send the saddle away, lose the saddle, pay a couple of grand and have new panels made for it. I there's nothing I can do, but I still will still go out and will find a saddle pad that has the shims in it that you can shim to help rebalance the saddle. I do that all day long. I'm not just going out just to say, well, that's rubbish. Here, buy this one. I don't do that. I have to come home and sleep at night.
Yeah.
No, I
Okay, cool.
don't. I don't do that.
So you are finding a lot of fixes
I do. I
for
do my
okay.
best, even if it's a towel folded into thirds that you shove under the front to help lift the saddle up off the withers. Most inexpensive fix
Yeah.
will get you through a couple of months.
Yeah.
Anything that will help, that's not going to cripple the horse, will fine. I mean, I've cut up yoga mats and shimmed them with fruit paring knives in someone's tack room before because I didn't have a knife with me. I mean, we can get creative.
Absolutely. And if somebody is like an event rider and
Yeah,
they jump and do dressage, is it
yeah.
oftentimes that you recommend like does it oftentimes work that they use the same jump saddle brand as the same dressage saddle brand or are those two things like completely different and people should maybe be looking at just like the broader offering? Kind of what do you recommend for that?
I don't think that matters. I think saddles are such a personal item of equipment that it's what the rider feels comfortable in. It could be anything. Doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter if that's what you're comfortable in. Then do that.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's got to fit the horse as well. Priority, but I don't. It doesn't matter to me. Um, it's such a personal item of equipment.
Yeah. How can you and so you kind of mentioned this at the front of the hour, but what are some ways that a rider should assess whether a saddle is balanced properly?
It has to be in the right place on the horse's back. So many. The biggest problem I find when I go into barns and see people is that they don't actually know where the saddle sits on the horse's back. Everyone's putting them way too far forward onto the scapula. The saddle sits between the 8th and the 18th thoracic vertebrae. So the 8th is two fingers behind the back of the scapula, and the 18th is the last rib. So the saddle sits there. If the saddle is on the scapula and it's too far forward, it's usually too low in the back, and so the rider's on the back of the cantle. So once the saddle is in the right place, the cantle should be a little bit higher than the pommel,
Okay.
as a rule of thumb. But again, everyone's visions and visual perception is different. And when I'm looking at saddle, I'm 5'10". Someone who's 5'2" has a completely different visual conception of what I'm seeing. So it's, where are you looking? What level are you looking at the saddle? If
Yeah.
you're looking up at it, it's a completely different view from me where I'm looking sideways on at it. It's different. So that, again, that's a very hard question to answer in one go because there's so many variables.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. What advice do you have for riders to ensure they're getting a fair price on a used saddle?
Um, well, as long as it's not more than what they're worth new.
Fair.
And that varies. A lot of people will look at eBay and see saddles, and it's kind of a good idea of what saddles are going for, and I think it varies area to area, state to state, what the value is, the viewed value.
Yeah.
How old is it? The age of the saddle and the condition will reduce the price for sure.
Yeah.
Don't
Okay.
You don't want that used saddle to be close to the new price. It should be 50 to 60% lower.
Wow. Okay.
Ish. It's like buying a car. Once you buy a car, it's 50, you've lost 50% of it, haven't you? It's the same
Yeah.
with saddles.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite resources, books, courses, or websites for riders who want to educate themselves more about saddle fit?
Um, So the Society of Master Saddlers is a good resource to that. I mean, they run courses. You can read up about the Society of Master Saddlers and their vision and what they do. It's funny. I am in the process of writing and saddle fitting courses for people, because I'm going to start running courses for
Awesome.
people. Yeah, I've written the courses and I just haven't done anything with it yet, because I just don't think that there is anywhere that you can pick it up from a book. It's hands on. It's a hands
Yeah.
on. Yes, you can read, you know, the basics, but it is very much a hands on profession. You can't teach it from a book. You got to do it live and
Yeah.
feel with your hands.
Super cool. Okay, so as we're almost here on the hour, is there anything else, like any myths related to saddle fitting or buying a new saddle, or just your work in the saddle maker industry that you would like to clarify? Or is there any other information, any questions I haven't asked that you think that are topics that you think we should cover?
No, we've covered an awful lot, haven't we? I think one myth is you cannot tell if the tree is twisted unless you take that tree out of the saddle. I get that a lot. People saying, "Oh, the tree's twisted, the tree's twisted, the tree's twisted." You cannot tell if that tree is twisted unless you take that saddle apart and put it on a flat bench, and see exactly what's going on. And this, again, no one has X-ray eye vision. The tree is buried in the saddle. You can't. It's impossible to tell.
What's making people think that it is?
They're looking at the stitch lines on the seat. The seat and the skirts are stitched. Usually they're hand cut or hand stitched together, and they're handmade, so they're not going. It's not the saddle isn't stamped out of a 3D printer. It's not machine stamped. It's hand done. So if the stitching is a little bit higher one side than the other, it doesn't mean the tree is twisted, because that's just it's just leather laid on the seat, etc., etc. Does not mean that the tree is twisted.
Okay. Um, anything else related to anything else? Any other things you'd like to clarify?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
It's okay if nothing comes to
I
mind.
don't know if I do. We've
No
covered
worries.
an awful lot.
We have.
Yeah.
Okay. And lastly, if a rider could walk away from this conversation with one golden rule about saddle shopping or fitting, what would it be?
Get someone who has an education. I'm so lucky to have had the education that I have had, and I'm very grateful, and I'm very grateful to be in this industry. And there aren't many of us. There's only 3 of us in this country, but there are more saddle fitters than there are master saddlers in this country. Use the website, advocate for your horse, find out who has at least got an education in what they're doing. I
Yeah,
think it's so important, so important.
absolutely. Well, Kate, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your expertise with us and everybody who submitted questions. Thank you for doing
Yeah, you're
so.
welcome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I hope you have a wonderful week, and we hope to be able to work with you more in the future.
For sure. For sure.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a good
Bye.
day.
You
Bye.
too. Bye.